Hello and welcome to episode 574 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always joined by Evan Silva, and we are coming off of the riveting NFL event that is minicamp and OTA season. I'm not sure if you heard, Evan, everyone is in the best shape of their lives. Running backs are lining up at wide receiver. Every rookie looks better than the coaches even expected. All this, of course, with no pads on. How's it going today, Evan?
It's going pretty well. We'll try to decipher what stuff is meaningful, what stuff is not meaningful. You know, should we adjust ranks on certain guys? I'm actually on the board 1.01 right now in a Best Ball Mania draft underdog. I'm taking Justin Jefferson 1.01.
All right, and we'll talk about some Viking stuff here in a little bit today. As Evan said, on today's show, we're going to discuss the news, and I say quote-unquote news, as I use that term lightly, coming out of OTAs, what's real, what's signal, what do we need to factor into our projections and rankings, and what can we ignore, what's fake news. Before we get into that, reminder that our 2023 Fantasy Football Draft Kit Pro is officially live. It's $49.99. It covers everything you need to win your best ball, dynasty, or redraft league. We get asked all the time, how can I support the show? How can we support the show? All these free pods, free content. It's so great. They help me dominate. Best way to support the show is just by checking out Draft Kit Pro. Head to EstablishTheRun.com. Hit the subscribe tab. All right. First thing I want to talk about is this Steph Diggs situation, Evan. I was actually out in Chicago visiting you, meeting with some other ETR people, and we're having lunch. And all of a sudden, everybody's freaking out about Steph Diggs because Steph Diggs did not show up to the first day of mandatory minicamp. And Coach Sean McDermott says he's very concerned. I didn't take that very seriously. I thought it was just, hey, listen, the guy's very concerned because they're here for mandatory minicamp. Everybody's here except for Steph Diggs, and they want to start practicing. I didn't take it to be very concerned, like it's some very ominous thing. What was your reaction to the whole Steph Diggs situation?
I think it's a situation where you don't want to overreact. I mean, Steph Diggs has been in the offense for multiple years. He, is a proven veteran. I think he's shown an excellent rapport with Josh Allen over the past several seasons, and I don't think he needs to be there for anything, before training camp. At the same time, there is enough concern that Sean McDermott said that he was very concerned. There have been some sort of it's been unclear exactly why Steph Diggs is not there. There was one rumor that he had gone into rehab. I don't want to spread that rumor because I don't know it to be true from Adam. There have also been rumors that he was concerned with his role in the offense and his role in the play calling. He is that established veteran, and he wants to have a little bit more say when it comes to the direction of the offense. They did change the offense last year a little bit under Ken Dorsey, and it seems as though they're going to change it a little bit more this year because they drafted Dalton Kincaid after signing Dawson Knox to a big deal at the start of last season. And maybe Steph Diggs has some question about that. At the end of the day, Steph Diggs is the clear number one in Buffalo. They really don't have that strong of a wide receiver core behind him. I think ultimately, I think everything's going to be fine here. I'm not worried. I'm not adjusting him down the ranks or anything like that.
I've heard so many different rumors. The one that Evan said about the rehab thing is so funny. I think that got started because he was wearing a shirt from some rehab center. If you go to rehab, you don't buy the merch while you're there. You don't walk around with them. It's not like walking around with an ETR merch shirt because you support the squad. I thought that one was crazy. I did hear that there was some issues between Diggs and Josh Allen around the way Josh Allen played in that Bengals playoff game where they got absolutely smoked 27-10. Josh Allen was really bad in that playoff game. I believe it was in January. Yeah, January. So, and the other thing that's out there is that he restructured his contract to allegedly help them fit DeAndre Hopkins, and now it looks like they're not going to get DeAndre Hopkins, and he's tilted about that. Regardless, I think all this stuff is noise. I would personally take Cooper Kupp ahead of Steph Diggs, and if you wanted to take A.J. Brown or Austin Eckler ahead of Steph Diggs, I wouldn't hate you for it, but I think all those guys are relatively close. I do think Cooper Kupp ahead of Diggs in round one is my preference. Let's go to the other big story coming out of OTAs. The actual news was Dalvin Cook getting dumped. I have talked about this ad nauseum a million times. I'm actually already tired of talking about it, but I've not had a chance to talk to Evan about it. So, Evan, I think that people want to know from you, what do you think about Alexander Mattison? And then we'll get to Dalvin Cook's potential landing spots after this. But what is your outlook on Alexander Mattison now? Where would you draft him? And then also the guys behind him. There's a bunch of competition there. How do you think that'll shake out?
Been huge on him throughout the process. I think I tried to go out of my way in the initial top 150 and in the running back tiers to be ahead of him in terms of ADP. Actually, I think I had him RB11 in my opening RB tiers. And I feel really good about his workload. They signed him to a near fully guaranteed contract. Dalvin Cook is gone. Their number 2 back, Ty Chandler, hey, I like him as a later round pick. But he's built like a wideout, and I think he projects more as like a change of pace back, a speedy change of pace back, and an interesting one for the late rounds of fantasy, but not a guy like Alexander Mattison, who's like 225 pounds, built to be a workhorse. They've got Kenny Nwangwu, who is, going to be on the active 53 or the active 46 each week because he plays special teams. And then they use the 7th round pick on Dwayne McBride. And I think that they're going to enter camp with those being their 4 running backs. I don't think they're going to go add a veteran. And if that's the case, I feel really, really, really good about Alexander Mattison's projected workload. I know that, some people out there have talked about he hasn't been like the most efficient runner on a play-to-play basis. But ultimately, like, his workload is what we're looking at in fantasy. That's what matters most. And in his past opportunities to play in place of Dalvin Cook, who, missed time here and there with ankle, shoulder, that kind of stuff, Alexander Mattison was highly, highly productive, and they showed a willingness to give him the ball, over and over and over again. So I love drafting out Alexander Mattison. Even to this point, I'm not sure that his ADP is caught up yet to where he should be being drafted.
Yeah, and it's lagging. I mean, I've seen him start going in the 50s a lot now. We have him somewhere between 50 and 55 overall, depending on the site. I think the question that the Mattison people have is he not good enough for the whole year to sustain a full workload? If you think later in the year that McBride or one of these other guys, Chandler, whoever, is going to end out stealing work, then yeah, it's risky. I think I'm of the belief, and Evan is of the belief, that these guys, these day 3 picks, McBride, the special teamer Keeney Ngakoue, Ty Chandler, these guys are not a real threat to Alexander Mattison's workload, not just the beginning of the year, which I think everybody feels good about, but also assuming he can stay healthy, which is always a problem for a featured running back in the NFL. But November, December, I still think Alexander Mattison will have that big workload. So I agree with Evan. I like being higher than market, right around the 50th overall, I think is pretty good right now. And that's where we have Alexander Mattison. On the other side, Evan, Dalvin Cook has not signed yet. And so people were thinking, oh, Dalvin Cook is this awesome player. He'll get scooped up right away. The Dolphins are into him. I heard about links to the Jets, the Bills, the Cowboys, the Chargers. I mean, there's a lot of teams in theory that could take on Dalvin Cook. I think he probably overweights what he's worth in the open market, and therefore he's not going to get a deal done anytime soon. What do you think about where Dalvin Cook will land? And honestly, like, we have to talk about where would you take him now in fantasy drafts, because in best ball, we're drafting now. And if you end up with him as a starter at like pick 100, maybe that makes sense. He could also be totally dusty. So yeah, Evan, what do you think about Dalvin Cook's landing spots here?
I've done about 15 drafts at this point on Underdog, and I don't think I've got him one time. It's a little bit too much uncertainty for me. There have been rumors of him to Miami. I feel like those have been pushed by Dalvin Cook himself, played at Florida State, looking for a new home. I don't know that the Dolphins, that's a mutual feeling that the Dolphins are interested in. I mean, the Dolphins running back room, like, they can absolutely go into the season with Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, Devin Achane, and Salvin Ahmed, and they've still got Myles Gaskin, and feel very fine about that. So, I think the answer is still up in the air. I wouldn't be surprised if Dalvin Cook, doesn't sign before training camp, signs at some point in training camp. And that leaves a lot of room for uncertainty. It winds up going to a team where maybe a player gets hurt in the preseason, a player gets hurt early in training camp, and then they feel a little bit of desperation and they go get Dalvin Cook, because I don't think he's going to get the money that he seems to be searching for anytime soon.
No, I mean, he's got to come to grips with reality that he's probably not worth more than 3 or 4 million on a 1-year deal or something like that. He wants way, way, way more than that. But it's something interesting. We have 126th overall in our underdog rankings right now, which is certainly below market. I just think that he has less gas left in the tank than maybe a lot of other people do. And even if he goes somewhere like Buffalo or Dallas or the Jets, he's going to be playing not a full workload type of deal. All right, let's get to some beat writer speculation stuff. This is not OTA news per se, but Eagles running back situation I think is a very, very interesting one. Bo Wolf, who covers the Eagles for The Athletic, speculated that Rashaad Penny could start the year on IR. Not necessarily because Rashaad Penny may still be hurt or whatever, but they just have a lot of guys. And then people keep talking of Trey Sermon. Now, Evan has made his feelings clear about Trey Sermon, but the backfield now, let me set it up. DeAndre Swift, who they traded for, Kenny Gainwell, who they've shown a lot of faith in the playoffs last year for sure, Boston Scott, Trey Sermon, and Rashaad Penny. Bo Wolf's point was that Rashaad Penny only has $500K guaranteed in his contract. He's far from a lock to actually make the team. They could stash him on IR, whatever. Who knows, Evan? How serious do you take this speculation from Bo on Rashaad Penny?
Well, Rashaad Penny has been participating in pre-training camp activities. So the IR speculation, I mean, that just seems out of nowhere. I understand that he fractured his fibula last year and he has a history of injuries, but I mean, he actually has to have an injury to go on the injured list. So, and I understand that the backfield is pretty full on paper right now. DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, Rashaad Penny, Boston Scott. To me, Trey Sermon is not really a factor. I mean, we've seen him in the NFL, and I mean, he looked like he's running with the piano on his back. So, I mean, I think that Rashaad Penny is just as likely as any of these other guys to lead the team in carries. I also understand that his contract. I mean, his contract is that of a player who is competing for a roster spot.
Right.
I mean, at the same time, like I think he's a good runner, like a really good runner, and I think he's going to lead the team in carries in week 1. That would still be my projection. At the same time, like I'm drafting the heck out of Kenneth Gainwell. He's my highest drafted player so far on Underdog.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Kenneth Gainwell in the next episode. Right now, we are below market on DeAndre Swift by 6 spots. We are behind market Rashaad Penny by about 9 spots, and we are ahead of market on Kenneth Gainwell by about 10 spots. That's on Underdog. We do not have Trey Sermon or Boston Scott ranked, and I feel pretty good about how we have the Eagles' backs right now. There's just so much fragility. Like Evan said, Rashaad Penny being the lead runner for the whole year, all the way to Rashaad Penny getting cut, I think is a realistic range of outcomes. And so have to think about that when you're making your teams. What kind of safety do you need in terms of volume in your spot? If you already have a bunch of running backs that have really good safety in terms of workload, maybe you can take some shots on Rashaad Penny. Let's go to Ravens stuff. Report out of Ravens OTAs is that Todd Monken, a Silva favorite, has prioritized playing faster and getting running backs involved in the passing game. This is a stark contrast to what the Ravens have done before. Ravens have been one of the slowest teams in the entire NFL. They have not thrown to their running backs at a very high rate at all. I thought more of that was Lamar's style more than the scheme. But anyways, Evan, how much do you buy this Todd Monken faster running backs involved in the pass game stuff?
Well, the two biggest buzzwords coming out of Todd Monken's mouth since the Ravens signed him to be their new offensive coordinator have been pace and space. And, he's talked about how he thinks that the league has become the big theme of the changing of the winds and the tides across the league is that, you want to use the space on the field more. And you also want to increase Lamar Jackson's passing efficiency, which has been a little bit up and down. And one way to do that would be higher percentage completions, throws to the running backs. If you read Jeff Zrebiec of The Athletic's latest article, he talked about how Justice Hill was a sort of riser in the pre-training camp activities. Justice Hill has been around. We've kind of seen him a little bit. And so that's a little bit hard to buy. J.K. Dobbins hasn't even been in attendance at pre-training camp activities. I think he can catch the ball, but that's never really been like a huge part of his game, even going back to college. Gus Edwards, it's been an even smaller part of his game. So at first I was thinking that Isiah Likely might be a guy that Todd Monken targeted as, a player, a sort of complementary player in their skill position core that could see a bigger role. And I still think that could be the case. I don't know. I'm kind of in wait and see mode as it pertains to the running backs actually getting involved more in the passing game, because as you mentioned, that's not a big part of Lamar Jackson's game, because, I mean, look, he would rather take off and run in the obvious passing situations than dump it off to a running back. So I don't know. I'm kind of in wait and see mode on that. At the same time, remaining very optimistic about Todd Monken and this Ravens offense. Pat Thorman pointed out that under Greg Roman's watch, the old OC, the Ravens were consistently one of the slowest teams in the league. I don't think they're all of a sudden going to be one of the fastest teams in the league, but just getting maybe into the middle of the road, like that's going to increase their play volume significantly and help their fantasy production.
Yeah, totally agree. I think it's kind of fake news on the running back and the pass game stuff. We hear that every year. That is not the type of player that Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, or Gus Edwards are. The pace stuff, though, you can see it, man. I mean, Lamar Jackson, the way he played in college, Todd Monken, some of those college offense that he coordinated played super, super fast. I can see them playing really fast and elevating their plays run this year. One more note from Ravens OTAs. Rashad Bateman needed a cortisone shot in his foot. Remember, Rashad Bateman is only 7 months removed from Liz Frank surgery. I'm sure guys get cortisone shots all the time. It's not a big deal. I've actually had one personally in my foot, which makes you know that it's really not a big deal at all. That said, he's still only 7 months removed from Liz Frank, and I think people were kind of glossing over that. I prefer Zay Flowers at this point over Rashad Bateman, but if you told me Rashad Bateman was 100% healthy, I'd probably prefer Bateman. So that's one just to keep an eye on there on the Bateman versus Flowers stuff.
Yeah, another player that Jeff Zrebeck mentioned as a riser at early Ravens workouts is Nelson Aguilar, and he's like their insurance policy, I think, for Rashad Bateman.
Yeah. All right. Steelers camp. There's a lot of Jaylen Warren hype out there, man, and like it's hard for me to fully get my head around it because you use a first-round pick on Najee Harris. Najee Harris held up to big workloads very, very well. He has not been very explosive, but I think Najee Harris has been fine. Though, beat writer speculation is that there's no way Matt Canada can keep Jaylen Warren off the field as much as he did last year. Jaylen Warren was efficient as a runner last year, 77 carries at 4.9 yards per carry. He also caught 28 balls despite only playing 342 snaps. Last year, Najee got 763 snaps. I think that can get closer, but I just don't know that it will because they have so much invested in Najee. I still like late round picks, though, on Jaylen Warren. There's a lot of ways it can work out for him. What do you think about Warren versus Najee this year?
Yeah, I also like Jaylen Warren in the late rounds because, I mean, you look at the rest of the depth chart and it's like Jason Huntley and Anthony McFarland and, a bunch of undrafted guys. So I think that Jaylen Warren does have a secure role. I think that split that they had last year, I mean, Jaylen Warren played a significant role last year. That was like one of the bigger themes that we talked about as the season progressed. 28 catches is a good number for a number 2 back. Maybe he could get closer to 100 carries, but I think that Najee Harris is going to still be the pretty clear 1A, and Jaylen Warren is going to be the breather back, the change of pace guy. And I think that the split will be probably more similar than these beat writers have been alluding to.
Okay. I think the best case for Allen Robinson is that he's going to be a full-time slot player now. Last 2 seasons, only 29% of Allen Robinson's snaps came out of the slot. That's going to bump to like 80% in Pittsburgh because both Pickens and Deontay Johnson play outside. Now, does that mean I want to bet on Allen Robinson as the third wide receiver, the slot man for Kenny Pickett? I don't know about that, but in some draft rooms, I mean, he lasts for a long time because no one wants to pick this guy. So, Evan, any takes on Allen Robinson as a slot player now for Kenny Pickett?
So Allen Robinson began his career in Jacksonville as like primarily a perimeter player. When he went to Chicago and he was playing really well under Matt Nagy sort of used him a little bit like Michael Thomas, and he was productive in the slot. And Last year he was like an outside receiver with the Rams, and he was completely unsuccessful.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense for them to give him a look in the slot. I think that Calvin Austin, the second-year player, fourth-round pick last year, poses some threat to Allen Robinson being the Steelers' third receiver. I'm willing to take 18th round shots on Allen Robinson. He's often there, like regularly there in the 18th round as my like wide receiver 8. He definitely could be washed, but I think that him playing in the slot gives him the best opportunity to pay back that ADP. The cost is so low. I don't mind taking him.
Yeah, I mean, the receivers he goes around on Underdog is like Richie James and Corey Davis. I mean, you're not asking a lot for Allen Robinson to contribute when he's competing against those kind of guys. Speaking of late round contributions, Luke Musgrave immediately was handed the first team reps working with the first team offense at Packers camp. And I always think it's at least notable when rookies get the first team reps at OTAs, because typically veterans get the nod whether they've earned it or not. Luke Musgrave, though, had no one to compete with. There's Josiah DeJura is still on the team, but besides that, there's like no one on the Packers for Luke Musgrave to compete with. So not a surprise he got the first round picks. We're talking about, these late round tight ends, Musgrave, Evans Boy, Michael Mayer, Trey McBride, they all go around 200th overall. And like, I'm willing to take shots there because, man, especially in best ball, like a one touchdown in week 17 from a tight end can be all the difference in the world. It's unlikely that some dusty wide receiver actually counts for you in week 17. So anyways, I'm interested in these guys. Evan, any Luke Musgrave takes now that we know he's getting the first team reps in camp?
Yeah, and I think that Josiah DeGuara, who is the holdover kind of veteran, is really more of like an H-back type. He's going to play some special teams. Luke Musgrave has like some explosive ability at tight end. I think that Tucker Kraft, they doubled down on tight ends in this year's draft. They took Luke Musgrave in the second, Tucker Kraft in the third out of South Dakota State. Tucker Kraft actually might pose more of a threat to Luke Musgrave than Josiah DeGuara. So I don't know. This is a situation I think is going to shake out. How good is this passing offense really going to be with Jordan Love? I think Luke Musgrave is a fine tight end 3, tight end 4 in the 17th or 18th round. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how he comes along in training camp and preseason.
Michael Mayer or Luke Musgrave, Evan, who do you prefer?
Michael Mayer. I mean, Michael Mayer's got to deal with Austin Hooper, who's a proven veteran. Mm-hmm. But I think that Michael Mayer is better than Luke Musgrave.
Yep. All right. Bears camp. Not that this is that important because I don't think too many people care about the Bears' number 3 wide receiver, nor they should. However, Chase Claypool, there was a report from the radio in there that said, all I can tell you is that it isn't trending in the way the Bears have wanted to trend this offseason, and that is on Chase Claypool. I don't think he's going to push DJ Moore or Darnell Mooney for any kind of target share, any kind of snaps. They also drafted Tyler Scott, and I actually think we'll see a lot more 2 tight end stuff from the Bears with Cole Kmet and Big Bub Tunyon. So I know Chase Claypool, they traded a second-round pick for him, which turned out to be a very, very valuable pick, but man, just doesn't seem like a guy that teams, coaches like, and I don't particularly want to make a bet on him in the late rounds now. Any comments on Bears pass game and Claypool?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's one of the moves that Ryan Pace has made so far. Maybe the only move that I would like significantly disapprove of. I mean, I thought it was kind of rough at first, and it turned out to be really rough, and now it's looking even rougher. Chase Claypool has a lot of talent. I mean, he's like a 98th percentile spark athlete. He had a really big final season at Notre Dame, and he had a promising start to his career in Pittsburgh, but he's just kind of shaping up as an enigmatic underachiever, and he's not really someone that I want any part of at this point in fantasy drafts. I have been taking quite a bit of DJ Moore. I think that there's and I didn't think that I would be, but I think where he's been lasting in drafts, there's been enough negative rhetoric from the rest of the fantasy community on DJ Moore because of, the pass volume concerns, which that's a real concern. But I think that Justin Fields can take a step as a passer this year, potentially really big step. I like what they've done in the offensive line, particularly. And I've been getting a decent amount of DJ Moore.
Yeah. I've been slow to pull the trigger where he goes at 47. He's going 47 overall. If he gets into that like 55, 60 range, I'm more than happy to take DJ Moore. I think 47 overall is a little steep for me on DJ Moore, but I hear you. Talented guy and certainly going to have plenty of opportunity there when they do throw. The other Bears thing I wanted to note was that Khalil Herbert got the first team running back reps at OTAs, but I would note D'Onta Foreman sat out. And this is going to be an open competition, I think, between Khalil Herbert, D'Onta Foreman, and Rashaad Johnson. We're slightly behind ADP on all three of these guys right now because, frankly, we don't even know who's going to win it. If you have a lot of conviction about who's going to get the work here, I think you could probably make some hay and create some value. I don't have strong conviction about Herbert versus Foreman versus Rashaad Johnson. Evan, any thoughts on this backfield as we come into OTAs?
Yeah, I don't have any strong feelings right now because, as you mentioned, D'Onta Foreman was not there. Rashaad Johnson is a day 3 rookie. Khalil Herbert has the veteran deference working in his favor. He's been in the offense and he's good. I mean, Khalil Herbert. You remember last year we were talking about how we kind of thought at times he's better than David Montgomery.
Yep.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting backfield because I think they're going to have a really productive running game. I still think that D'Onta Foreman is the favorite for carries there, but I would say that with not a ton of confidence.
Speaking of not a ton of confidence, I talked about this Cam Akers stuff some on Market Monday, but I'm curious on your take, Evan. After everything Cam Akers went through last year, borderline looked like he was out of the league, comes back and rips off this amazing ending to his season, still only 23 years old. Comment from Sean McVay that caught headlines was Cam Akers will be a central figure in our offense this year. Do you buy that after everything we saw last year on Cam Akers?
I do, almost, because what else are they going to do? Because Kieran Williams, second-year running back out of Notre Dame, he weighs less than 200 pounds. I think he's a Theo Riddick type player. He's going to play some special teams. I know that they like him a lot, but I think he's a change of pace back at best. And Zach Evans, who they drafted in the 6th round, and they're bringing back Ronnie Rivers. So that's their backfield right now. Mm-hmm. Cam Akers finished last season strong. He's an uncomfortable draft selection, but if you're if you're talking about projected volume, he's going to end up being a dead zone running back for sure, right?
He's going He's going 72nd overall right now on Underdog. He's going high, much higher he's going like the 50s on FFPC.
Yeah, that sounds about right because on FFPC they just draft running backs earlier.
Right.
I took him the other day in an Underdog draft. I didn't love it, but the projected volume is working in his favor because there's just such little competition with the Rams.
I mean, the case for Akers, people are going to say, and I hate that people are going to do this, but every time there's like a middle/later round running back that had talent and could have a 3-down role, but people don't want to click him, people are going to say, oh, this is this year's Josh Jacobs, right? This year's Josh Jacobs is Cam Akers because no one wants to click him. He's a veteran running back. He could end up with a 3-down role. As I said on Market Monday, I don't have a strong take on Akers right now, and typically when I don't have a strong take on a running back in this range, I just pass. So we'll see what happens with Cam Akers, but that could end up looking bad if he really does, and if Stafford stays healthy and he ends up as a 3-down back. One more small ones I wanted to get your take on. There's been a ton of Elijah Moore hype coming out of Browns camp, ton of it. Do you buy that? There's certainly a competition there, and they've also been linked to DeAndre Hopkins, and because they've been linked to DeAndre Hopkins some, that has backed me off a little bit on taking Elijah Moore because I think that would hurt him pretty significantly. Do you buy the Elijah Moore hype right now, Evan?
I think he's a talented player, and then he could absolutely be looking really good in the pre-training camp activities. He's just been to use the term again, an enigmatic underachiever to this point in his career. Has kind of he kind of clashed with the coaching staff, it seemed like, with the Jets. I'm in wait and see mode on him. I think that if they were to acquire DeAndre Hopkins, which I think was a pretty hot rumor for a minute, they could move Amari Cooper inside and play Donovan Peoples-Jones on the perimeter opposite Hopkins. That would hurt Elijah Moore. Mm-hmm. Cedric Tillman is a player that I know that a lot of smart people are on as a 3rd-round rookie. I don't know. I'm in wait and see mode on this situation.
Yeah, we're behind market on Elijah Moore right now. His ADP through this hype has gotten steamed. I mean, he's up to 87th overall on Underdog is Elijah Moore. That is very steep. We have him 103 right now in our rankings. So Yeah, it's just not the time for me to be taking Elijah Moore. I just wanted to know Mike Williams. We had some worries about his back, but I thought it was notable he was at OTAs and practicing with the first team. Combine that with a more aggressive Chargers offense under Kellen Moore. We'll talk more about that next episode. And I think Mike Williams is a pretty safe guy right now in terms of health and scheme. One position battle I don't know if you even thought about, but Khalil Shakir had a bunch of hype during OTAs. And then it was Trent Sherfield. We haven't heard about Deontay Hardy, but these are the men that are currently battling for the third wide receiver job in Buffalo. Market right now prefers Khalil Shakir. His ADP is 187. Sherfield goes 215. Deontay Hardy is not even getting drafted in most leagues. Any lean for you, Evan, on Bills number 3 wide receiver, assuming they don't get DeAndre Hopkins?
I think that Trent Sherfield, although, he's another one of these undrafted guys that just no team has ever invested in him. So he's never stuck anywhere, even when he's played well. I mean, Kyle Shanahan really liked him in San Francisco. He made some plays behind Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in Miami last year. I think he's kind of interesting. It's just it's hard to trust him because of the complete lack of investment. Khalil Shakir, another guy. I mean, the Bills took him. I think he was a 5th round pick. He got a little bit of run as a rookie. Didn't really do a whole lot. Deontay Hardy is just diminutive. I mean, he's really, really small, but he's explosive. Yeah. He's going to play in the return game. He's their almost seemingly direct replacement for Isaiah McKenzie, who was a very similar player. I think it's probably going to be a rotation, not a whole lot of fantasy value coming out of it, unless like 1 or 2 of the guys get hurt and then someone's thrust into a bigger role.
I mean, the idea here by taking Dalton Kincaid in the first round is that you're going to play Knox and Kincaid together a lot, I think, and that's going to leave these guys off the field. My other concern with these guys is throughout their career, they've been really bad in targets per route run. I mean, even when they get out there and they run routes, they don't earn a lot of targets. So I comment with Evan, mostly passing here on those guys. The Sam Howell versus Jacoby Brissett battle is an interesting one because a lot of people like Sam Howell as a sleeper, and there's a lot of guys on Washington that you can stack with late. The problem for me is that Ron Rivera is coaching for his job, and Jacoby Brissett was actually pretty decent last year. I mean, Jacoby Brissett had a 7.1 yards per attempt last year. He had a 60 QBR, which was 8th best in the entire league, 88.9 passer rating. It's hard for me to really believe that Sam Howell actually gives the Commanders a better chance to win than Jacoby Brissett. But all the reports out of OTAs and Commanders is that they really, really want Sam Howell to run away with this job. What do you think for now, Evan, week 1 and beyond, Howell versus Brissett?
I think my analysis would be almost the exact same as yours. There's reason to believe that the Commanders could win football games with Jacoby Brissett, but I think the organization prefers Sam Howell because of the upside factor. And also I think that we as fantasy players should prefer Sam Howell because he's an athlete. He was pretty darn good for most of his career at North Carolina. And we've kind of seen the Jacoby Brissett show, and it's not all that exciting from a box score standpoint.
Certainly. I think they're both going to make starts this year. That's the bottom line. And like that, I like taking shots on Howell late because there's some asymmetric stuff there. If he does play well, that will lead to him making more starts, so draft as if you're right stuff. So I still like the Howell stuff, but I think the base case, the most likely outcome is they both make starts this year. Giants wide receivers has been a mess. At OTAs, Jalen Hyatt was with the third team. And again, I don't want to read too much into that because he is a rookie, but I thought it's notable because he was such a polarizing prospect, was Jalen Hyatt coming out of that gimmicky offense at Tennessee. At OTAs, though, it was Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins out wide, Paris Campbell in the slot. That was the first team. Sterling Shepard did participate some, but he is coming off that ACL. Wan'Dale Robinson is behind him as well by 2 months in terms of his ACL tear. So Wan'Dale might not even be ready for week 1 at this point. But yeah, there's a lot of guys here. I still think my favorite is probably Hodgins, but it's like real close between Hodgins, Slayton, and Paris. I talked about Market Monday while I've been mostly out on Jalen Hyatt. Evan, do you have a favorite Giants wide receiver that you like to take here so far?
I've taken a little bit of Darren Waller and pretty much hands off when it comes to the wide receiver position. Jalen Hyatt was a big name. He played in the SEC. He scored 5 touchdowns against Alabama. He's got vertical speed. He had first-round buzz for most of the draft process. But I think that the league showed that they're skeptical of Jalen Hyatt. And I certainly think he was worth drafting in the 3rd round. But I would say that reflects poorly on his chances of the fact that he fell that far. Reflects poorly on his chances of making an instant impact. And 17th, 18th round, but he usually goes before that because everyone knows his name.
Yeah, his ADP is around 167. It was in the 150s as recently as last week. It's just cheap stacks, but I don't feel good about any of them. My favorite, I think, is still Hodgins, but Paris and Slayton aren't too far behind as like those backdoor Danny Dime stacks. Obviously, I think we all expect Darren Waller to lead the Giants in targets and catches this year. Darren Waller's former team, the Raiders, have a logjam at slot wide receiver, and that's led to a lot of speculation about trade rumors for Hunter Renfrow. Reports I've read say they're still looking to trade Hunter Renfrow, but they have found no takers yet. Not really a surprise to me. Maybe they'll find something in camp to dump Hunter Renfrow, or they could keep him. Now, Hunter Renfrow goes outrageously late in drafts. He has some outs to staying with Las Vegas and winning that slot job. He also has outs to getting traded to a team. He uses him. And honestly, I think this Jimmy Garoppolo foot issue has been overblown. I talked about this on Market Monday. His ADP sunk by like 30, 40 spots. I think the foot thing is going to be fine. I think the Raiders think it's going to be fine. I think it's most likely to be fine. So I like these backdoor Jimmy G stacks. I don't know about the Hunter Renfrow stuff. Right. Evan, any thoughts on Raiders pass game right now?
Yeah, I think that Jimmy G is a completely fine quarterback 3. Well, a really good quarterback 3.
Yeah.
And you could do worse than taking him super late as your quarterback 2. Hunter Renfrow, I want no part of, really. I don't think that the coaching staff right now with the Raiders, Josh McDaniels, kind of a play favorites coach, trust the guys that he knows. And we saw how Hunter Renfrow was used last year, and it wasn't very much when he was healthy. So, and they have Jacoby Myers, who is, a slot possession receiver, and that's essentially the position that Hunter Renfrow plays as well. So I think Jacoby Myers is a fine pick. I think that, Devontae Adams is still a pretty strong pick. I don't really have any interest in Hunter Renfrow.
Okay. Last couple of things I want to talk about. This undrafted free agent, Deneric Price, that the Chiefs took, running back, reportedly a good bet to make the 53-man roster. I don't really have a take there other than everybody thinks that they've found the next Isiah Pacheco, when in reality it so rarely actually happens. Any takes on this kid, Evan, Deneric Price?
Yeah, I looked him up, and he's the classic college free agent that the Chiefs will take a shot on because I know that they use a lot of analytics there, and his measurables were really, really impressive. So they'll just take a shot on that guy. They'll give him a little signing bonus, bring him into pre-training camp activities and probably into training camp and give him a shot. But he wasn't very productive in college. He caught like 10 passes in his entire college career or something like that. So I think that it's bold for anybody to be saying that he's a good bet to make the team. I don't know. He's a guy that I think in deep dynasty leagues, maybe you put at the end of your bench, but I'm still skeptical that he's going to make the 53.
Yeah, I think fake news and likely just one of these June OTA stories. Speaking of fake news, last thing I want to talk about, Evan mentioned the J.K. Dobbins not being at camp. Saquon Barkley is also threatening a holdout. This happens all the time with running backs. Are they treated unfairly by the NFL? Probably. Are they compensated correctly under the current parameters and replaceability and all that? Probably also. So I don't blame them for complaining at all. I think something needs to change at the running back position in terms of payouts and pay scale and guaranteed contracts and everything, but that's not the case now. And so Saquon and J.K. Dobbins can complain all they want. In the end, they don't have a lot of leverage. Saquon can play for $10 million this year, or he can sit out. And when you're a running back, I don't think he's going to sit out. So I would not be moving Saquon or J.K. Dobbins or any other running back who's complaining about their money if they're under contract I would not move them in the rankings at all. Evan, I assume you have a similar take there on the running back holdout threats.
Yeah, super high on Saquon this year. I actually think that his ADP is too low. I mean, we're talking about, guys in the top 15, and you can almost shuffle them any way you want. But I'm going to stay really high on Saquon Barkley. J.K. Dobbins, I'm a little bit more worried about just because of his injury history and how he's out there. I mean, playing on one leg last year was unbelievable, some of the stuff that he was able to do. I'm a little bit more worried about J.K. Dobbins. Haven't really been taking him in drafts.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's reason to be worried about J.K. Dobbins, but I don't think it's this contract stuff. Like nothing's really going to be an issue there, I don't think. All right. Hope that was helpful to get you guys caught up on all of the quote unquote news from OTAs and mini camps. We'll be back next episode to talk about late round best ball picks we've been taking and we like. Stay tuned for that. Also, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube. There's a ton of content on our YouTube channel that does not hit this podcast feed. I repeat, it does not hit this podcast feed. So be sure to check out our YouTube. Hit the subscribe button there. It is indeed free. For Evan, for producer Luke, I'm Adam. Good luck, everybody.